You stand at the threshold of a profound shift in perception. Until this moment, you have moved through the world behind a veil of selective attention, seeing only what you were told to see or what your immediate needs demanded of you. But that is about to change. You are entering a state of absolute clarity, a psychological and philosophical awakening where the fog of distraction dissipates and the raw, unfiltered mechanics of reality become visible. When we say you will see everything, we are not speaking of a supernatural power, but of a disciplined, heightened awareness, a strategic dismantling of the mental filters that have kept you in a state of reactive slumber. You are about to witness the hidden patterns in human behavior, the silent architecture of power, and the quiet internal tremors of your own psyche that have previously dictated your path without your conscious consent. Imagine walking into a room and not just seeing furniture and faces, but sensing the tension between individuals, the unspoken hierarchies, and the subtle cues of intent that others overlook. Imagine looking at your own life and seeing the direct, unvarnished causal links between your choices and your current reality, stripped of the comforting lies you tell yourself to stay comfortable. This is the weight of total sight. It is a burden, certainly, because once you see the truth of a situation, you can no longer hide behind the excuse of ignorance. You become responsible for every inch of ground you stand upon. But within that responsibility lies the ultimate form of agency. To see everything is to possess the blueprint of the labyrinth while everyone else is still bumping into the walls in the dark. Throughout this journey, you will learn to sharpen your observation until it becomes a tool of surgical precision. You will explore why you have been blind to certain truths, and how to cultivate a mind that refuses to blink in the face of uncomfortable data. This is a lecture for the part of you that is tired of being surprised by betrayal, exhausted by repetitive failures, and finished with the shallow interpretations of a noisy world. You are here to develop a panoramic vision that encompasses the micro and the macro, the tiny twitch of a lip that reveals a lie, and the sweeping historical and psychological forces that shape the decade ahead of you. You must prepare yourself for what this clarity requires. It requires the death of your ego, because the ego only wants to see what makes it feel safe or superior. To see everything, you must be willing to see your own inadequacies, your own shadows, and the ways in which you have been the architect of your own limitations. This is not a passive listening experience. It is a mental recalibration. By the time you reach the end of this narrative, the world will not have changed, but your ability to pass it will be unrecognizable. You will move with a new kind of quiet confidence, not because you have all the answers, but because you are finally asking the right questions and looking in the right places. You are no longer a passenger in the vehicle of your own life, staring out of a smeared window. You are the observer, the strategist, and the master of your own gaze. Open your eyes wide. The transition begins now. Chapter 1. The Architecture of the Unseen. You are currently existing within a world of fragments, a reality where you perceive only the surface tension of a much deeper ocean. To begin this journey of seeing everything, you must first acknowledge that your current vision is a product of survival, not mastery. Since the moment you gained consciousness, your mind has been trained to filter out 90% of the information surrounding you. You were taught to focus on the immediate, the loud, and the socially reinforced. You see the car driving toward you, the words on a screen, and the smile on a colleague's face, but you miss the mechanics of the engine, the intent behind the prose, and the micro tremors of anxiety beneath the facial muscles of the person standing before you. This chapter is your invitation to dismantle those filters. It is the beginning of your transition from a person who merely reacts to a person who truly observes. To see everything, you must first understand why you are currently blind. Your brain is an efficiency machine. It seeks to conserve energy by creating shortcuts. It labels people, situations, and emotions so that it doesn't have to process them anew every time they appear. When you see a friend, your brain stops looking at the individual and starts looking at the label. You stop noticing the subtle shift in their tone of voice or the way their body language has changed over the last 6 months because you think you already know who they are. This intellectual laziness is the primary barrier to your growth. You are living in a world of ghosts, remnants of past impressions that no longer match the present reality. To break this cycle, you must learn to look at the familiar as if it were alien. You must strip away the labels you have assigned to your environment and force yourself to witness the raw data of your existence. Imagine for a moment that you are standing in a crowded public space. Normally, you would be lost in your own thoughts, perhaps checking your phone or staring blankly into the distance. But now you choose to see. You begin to notice the way people move in relation to one another, the subtle dance of dominance and submission played out in the hallway. You see the person who overcompensates with loud speech to hide a lack of conviction. You see the person who shrinks their physical presence to avoid being challenged. Start to recognize the invisible threads of influence that pull at the crowd. This isn't a parlor trick. It is the fundamental reality of human interaction that has been happening around you your entire life. You were simply too preoccupied with your own internal monologue to notice it. By shifting your focus outward, you begin to reclaim the power that comes with objective awareness. This process of seeing everything starts with your own physical and mental state. You cannot observe the world clearly if your own internal lens is smeared with unexamined emotions and biases. You must become a scientist of your own mind. When you feel a surge of anger or a pang of jealousy or a wave of lethargy, you must not simply experience it, you must see it. You must look at the emotion as an external object, analyzing its origins and its impact on your perception. How does your vision change when you are afraid? You notice that your focus narrows, your periphery disappears, and you begin to see threats where there are only neutral occurrences. When you are seeking validation, you notice how you selectively hear only the praise and filter out the constructive critiques. By seeing these internal distortions, you begin to correct for them. You develop a calibrated eye that can account for its own prejudices, allowing you to see the world with a level of clarity that others find unsettling. As you sharpen this vision, you will start to notice the patterns of cause and effect that govern your life. You have likely spent years wondering why certain patterns repeat themselves, why you hit the same walls in your career, why your relationships follow the same arc of decline, or why your motivation vanishes just as you reach the threshold of success. To the unseeing eye, these are misfortunes or strokes of bad luck. To you, they will become visible as logical sequences of events. You will see the small, seemingly insignificant choices you made weeks or months ago that led inevitably to this moment. You will see the way your lack of discipline in one area of your life bled into another, creating a structural weakness that eventually caused a collapse. This is not about self-blame. It is about self-governance. When you see the blueprint of your failures, you gain the ability to redraw them. You are no longer a victim of circumstance because you can see the circumstances being built in real time. Seeing everything also means acknowledging the silence. Not most people listen only to what is said. You must learn to listen to what is left unexpressed. In every conversation, there is a subtext, a secondary narrative running beneath the surface. You will begin to notice the pauses that last a fraction of a second too long, the subjects that are carefully avoided, and the way a person's eyes disconnect from their words. This depth of perception allows you to navigate social and professional landscapes with a strategic advantage that is almost unfair. You are no longer guessing at people's motivations, you are observing them. You see the insecurity that drives the bully, the ambition that fuels the quietest person in the room, and the desperation that hides behind a mask of competence. This insight gives you the grace to respond rather than react. Or you move with a calculated stillness because you are seeing the entire chessboard, while others are focused only on the piece they are currently touching. However, you must be warned, this level of sight requires a high degree of psychological fortitude. To see everything is to see the decay as well as the growth. You will see the frailty of the institutions you once thought were solid. You will see the hidden flaws in the people you admire. You will see the vast, indifferent machinery of the world that cares nothing for your individual comfort. Many people choose blindness because the truth is heavy. They prefer the comfort of the fog, but you have chosen a different path. You understand that while the fog is comfortable, it is also a prison. By choosing to see, you are choosing the cold, sharp air of the mountaintop over the warm, suffocating air of the valley. You are accepting the responsibility of knowing. As you move through this first stage of your awakening, practice the moment of the observer. Several times a day, stop whatever you are doing and simply look. Do not judge, do not categorize, and do not plan your next move. Just witness the details, the texture of the wall, the rhythm of your own breathing, the specific shade of the sky, the tension in your shoulders. Expand this to the people around you. Watch their hands, listen to the cadence of their speech, observe the way they occupy space. You are training your brain to prioritize high-fidelity data over low-resolution shortcuts. You are building the muscle of attention. This is the foundation upon which everything else will be built. But you cannot master your destiny if you cannot see the ground you are walking on. You cannot influence others if you cannot see their true form. You cannot achieve greatness if you are blind to the reality of your own character. This chapter is the opening of the eye. It is the end of your time as a spectator of your own life and the beginning of your time as the ultimate witness. You are now aware that there is a layer of reality you have been missing, and you are committed to uncovering it. The world is full of secrets, but they are hidden in plain sight. You only need the courage to keep your eyes open. Chapter 2. The Anatomy of Human Intent. You are now beginning to realize that the world is not composed of objects and events, but of intentions and reactions. As your vision sharpens, you must turn your gaze toward the most complex machinery you will ever encounter, the human psyche. To see everything, you must move beyond the superficiality of what people say and do and begin to see the why that moves them like puppets on invisible strings. Most people spend their lives being surprised by the actions of others, distraught by a betrayal, confused by a sudden change in a partner's behavior, or frustrated by a colleague's lack of cooperation. They are surprised because they are looking at the mask, not the muscle beneath it. You, however, are developing the ability to see the skeletal structure of human motivation. You are learning that people rarely act at random. They act in accordance with a deeply ingrained set of internal scripts, fears, and unmet needs. And your first task in mastering this level of sight is to strip away the noise of language. Words are frequently used as a smokescreen, a way for individuals to present a version of themselves that they wish were true, or a version they believe you want to see. When you listen to someone, you must train yourself to hear the tonal subtext. You will notice that a person's words might project confidence, but the pitch of their voice rises slightly, revealing an underlying desperation for approval. You will see someone offer a compliment, but their eyes remain cold and unmoving, signaling that the praise is a tactical move rather than a sincere sentiment. By seeing these discrepancies, You are no longer a victim of manipulation. You are seeing the gears of the social engine as they turn. So you are recognizing that every interaction is a negotiation of status, safety, and belonging. Consider the concept of the shadow, that part of the personality that a person refuses to acknowledge. To see everything, you must learn to spot the shadow in others and in yourself. You will see it in the person who is overly critical of others' flaws, unconsciously projecting their own insecurities onto the world. You will see it in the individual who is obsessed with appearing virtuous, often to compensate for a hidden sense of moral inadequacy. When you see the shadow, you see the person's true vulnerabilities. This is not about gaining leverage to cause harm. It is about gaining the insight necessary to navigate human relationships with surgical precision. You stop arguing with the mask and start speaking to the person behind it. But you become the one who understands the room better than the people in it understand themselves. This depth of vision requires you to look at the concept of incentives. You will begin to see that most human conflict is not a result of malice, but of misaligned incentives. People act in their own perceived self-interest, even when that interest is self-destructive or harmful to others. When you look at a difficult situation at work or a recurring argument in your personal life, ask yourself, what is the hidden payoff for this behavior? You might see that a person remains in a state of perpetual crisis because it grants them the attention they crave. You might see that an organization resists change because the current inefficiency protects the status quo for those in power. By seeing the incentive structure, you stop taking things personally. You see the logic in the chaos. This clarity allows you to move with a strategic calm, shifting the incentives rather than fruitlessly attacking the behavior. To see everything, you must also confront the reality of human frailty. You will see that most people are governed by a profound sense of fear. Fear of obsolescence, fear of loneliness, fear of being found out as an imposter. This fear creates a defensive architecture around their lives. You see it in the way they hoard information, the way they deflect blame, and the way they cling to outdated beliefs. When you see this fear, your frustration turns into a calculated empathy. You realize that you cannot force someone to see what they are terrified to look at. You learn to work around their defenses or to provide the specific type of security that allows them to lower their guard. This is the mark of a master strategist, the ability to see the emotional landscape of the person across from you and to map your path accordingly. You must also apply this uncompromising gaze to your own reflection. This is perhaps the most difficult stage of seeing everything. You must see your own tells, the subtle ways you signal your own insecurities or dishonesties. You must see the moments where you choose the easy path over the right path and then build an elaborate justification for it afterward. To see yourself clearly is to catch yourself in the act of self-deception. You notice the way you procrastinate on a project, not because you are busy, but because you are afraid of the judgment that follows completion. But you notice the way you subtly undermine a peer because their success makes you feel small. When you see these patterns in yourself, you gain the power to break them. You are no longer a passenger to your own impulses. You are the driver who sees the road and the vehicle's flaws simultaneously. As you move through your day, begin to practice the third-person observation. Imagine you are a camera positioned in the corner of the room, watching yourself interact with others. See your posture, hear the tone of your voice, observe your facial expressions. Does the version of you that the world sees match the version you hold in your mind? Often, there is a vast canyon between the two. Seeing this gap is the first step toward closing it. You are aiming for a state of congruence, where your internal reality and your external expression are perfectly aligned. This alignment creates a psychological weight, a presence that others can sense but cannot quite define. They see someone who is all there, someone who cannot be easily swayed or deceived because they are already seeing the truth of the moment. You will also start to see the social architecture of your environment. You will see how groups form, how leaders are chosen, and how outsiders are designated. You will see the silent rules that everyone follows but no one speaks of. In any organization or social circle, there is a formal hierarchy and an informal one. To see everything is to recognize that the person with the title is not always the person with the power. You see the person who everyone turns to for approval, the person who holds the institutional memory, and the person who acts as the emotional lightning rod for the group. By seeing these invisible structures, you can position yourself for maximum influence with minimum effort. You are no longer swimming against the current. You are using the hidden undertows of social dynamics to propel you forward. The burden of this knowledge is that you can never go back to the blissful ignorance of the crowd. You will see the performance of life everywhere you go. You will see the staged outrage on social media, the performative kindness in public spaces, and the calculated vulnerability in professional settings. It can be easy to become cynical when you see the artifice of human interaction so clearly, but your goal is not cynicism. It is mastery. You see the performance so that you can choose when to participate and when to remain a detached observer. You see the strings so that you can stop being a puppet. You are building a life based on reality, not on the projections and illusions that satisfy the majority. As you conclude this chapter, reflect on the people closest to you. Look at them without the lens of your expectations or your history with them. See them as they are right now, their struggles, their quiet triumphs, and their hidden fears. When you truly see someone, you give them a rare and powerful gift, but more importantly, you protect yourself from the shocks of the unexamined life. You are becoming a person who is never truly surprised because you have learned to read the underlying code of human intent. The world is a book that most people are only skimming. You are the one who is finally learning to read between the lines. Chapter 3. The geometry of cause and effect. You have begun to see the masks of others and the filters of your own mind, but now your vision must expand to encompass the very fabric of time and consequence. To see everything is to stop viewing your life as a series of disconnected accidents and to start seeing it as a geometric progression. Most people live in a state of perpetual surprise, reacting to crises as if they fell from a clear blue sky. They treat the collapse of a relationship, the loss of a job, or the decline of their health as sudden intrusions of fate. But as you sharpen your sight, you will realize that nothing is sudden. Everything is a harvest. On every outcome you experience today is the fruit of a seed planted in the soil of your past, sometimes years ago, sometimes in the quiet, ignored moments of yesterday morning. You are moving toward a level of perception where you can see the trajectory of a bullet before it is even fired. To master this vision, you must develop an obsession with initial conditions. In mathematics and physics, a tiny change in the starting point of a system can lead to vastly different results over time. Your life functions by the same laws. You must look back at the major turning points of your existence and identify the small, seemingly trivial choices that set the entire chain in motion. Perhaps it was a single conversation you chose to avoid, or a habit you allowed to take root because it seemed harmless at the time. And by seeing these hinge points, you begin to understand that your future is being written in the margins of your present. When you look at your daily routine, you are no longer seeing just a schedule. You are seeing a series of calculated investments. You see the hour of scrolling on a screen not as relaxation, but as a withdrawal from the bank of your potential. You see the difficult workout not as pain, but as the structural reinforcement of your future self. This clarity allows you to perceive lag time. One of the greatest reasons people remain blind to cause and effect is that the consequence rarely follows the action immediately. If you ate a poisonous meal and felt the pain instantly, you would never eat it again. But in reality, the poison of a poor lifestyle, a toxic mindset, or a lack of discipline takes years to manifest. Because the feedback loop is long, the average person assumes there is no loop at all. They think they are getting away with it. You, however, see the lag. You look at a person who is cutting corners, and you don't see a shrewd operator. You see a structure with a hidden crack that will inevitably lead to a collapse under pressure. You look at your own moments of weakness, and you don't see a one-time exception. You see the beginning of a pattern that, if left unchecked, will define your character a decade from now. This foresight is your greatest strategic advantage. It allows you to endure the discomfort of the present because you can clearly see the beauty of the delayed reward. To see everything, you must also recognize the invisible web of influence. No action you take exists in a vacuum. Every choice ripples outward, affecting the people around you and, in turn, reshaping the environment you must live in. If you treat those beneath you with contempt, you are not just venting, you are creating a culture of resentment that will eventually sabotage your own goals. If you choose honesty in a difficult moment, you are not just being a good person, you are signaling to the world that you are a reliable anchor point, attracting high-level opportunities that others will never even hear about. You start to see that luck is often just the name people give to the favorable ripples of their own past integrity. Conversely, misfortune is often the collision with the ripples of past negligence. By seeing the web, you stop fighting the ripples and start directing the stone. This leads you to a profound realization about power. Power belongs to the person who can see the furthest down the chain of causality. Think of a grandmaster in chess. They do not look at the board and see pieces. They see a network of possibilities and consequences stretching 20 moves into the future. They see the ghosts of where the pieces will be. You must apply this to your professional and personal maneuvers. When a conflict arises, most people react to the immediate sting. They fire back an angry email or make a defensive comment. You, seeing everything, pause. You see that a defensive reaction will trigger a counter-reaction, which will alienate a key ally, which will eventually derail a project 6 months from now. Instead, you choose the move that serves the long-term geometry of your goals. You see the silence as a bridge, the concession as a trap, and the patience as a weapon. You are no longer playing the game of today. You are shaping the reality of next year. Furthermore, you must learn to see sunk costs for what they truly are. Many people are blinded by the time, money, or emotion they have already invested in a failing endeavor. They continue to pour resources into a dead-end job or a toxic relationship because they cannot bear the thought that their past efforts were wasted. Because they cannot see the future clearly, they are anchored to a ghost of the past. You, with your expanded vision, see that the past is gone and unchangeable. You look only at the trajectory. If the current path leads to a cliff, and it does not matter how long you have been walking it, the only logical move is to turn around. Seeing everything means having the cold, intellectual honesty to cut your losses the moment the geometry of the situation no longer adds up. You value your future time more than your past pride. As you navigate your world, you will also begin to see structural inevitabilities. There are certain systems, be they corporate, social, or biological, that are designed to produce specific results. If you put a person in a system that rewards greed, they will eventually become greedy, regardless of their initial character. If you live in an environment that prioritizes comfort over growth, you will eventually become stagnant. To see everything is to stop blaming the individuals and start analyzing the structures. You look at your own environment and ask, is the geometry of this room, this city, or this social circle designed to produce the version of me that I want to become? If the answer is no, you see the necessity of a radical change. You don't try to willpower your way through a broken system. You move to a system where the path of least resistance leads toward your success. This level of perception also reveals the compounding nature of truth. When you begin to live in alignment with what you see, your clarity increases exponentially. Every time you face a difficult truth without blinking, your vision becomes sharper for the next challenge. You stop being afraid of the worst-case scenario because you have already seen it, mapped it, and integrated it into your strategy. When you realize that fear is almost always the result of a blind spot, a place where you have refused to look. By shining the light of your awareness into every dark corner of your life, you eliminate the power that fear has over you. You move with a terrifyingly calm efficiency because there are no monsters left in the dark. There are only variables to be managed. Finally, you must see the inevitability of change. Nothing in the world you observe is static. Every relationship, every career, and every physical state is in a constant process of either growth or decay. Most people are blinded by the illusion of permanence. They think their success will last forever, or they fear their suffering will never end. You see the cycles, you see the winter in the middle of summer, and you prepare. You see the seeds of the next boom in the middle of the crash, and you invest. This temporal vision keeps you centered. You are not swayed by the temporary highs or the fleeting lows because you see the larger wave they are a part of. You become the steady point in a turning world. As you conclude this chapter, take a moment to look at your current biggest challenge. Don't look at it as a problem to be solved, but as a result to be analyzed. Trace the lines of causality back as far as you can. What small choices fed this? What structural weaknesses allowed it? Then look forward. If you change nothing, where does the geometry of this situation lead in 5 years? If you change one initial condition today, how does that ripple out into a new reality? You are the architect of the lines. You are the master of the sequence. To see everything is to know that you are not just living your life, you are constructing it, one inevitable consequence at a time. Gemini said, Chapter 4, The Currency of Attention. You are now beginning to realize that the most valuable asset you possess is not your money, your time, or even your talent. It is your attention. To see everything, you must first see where your gaze is being stolen. We live in an era designed to fracture your focus, a world that profits from your distraction. Every notification, every sensational headline, and every trivial conflict is a vacuum designed to pull your vision away from the path of mastery and into the swamp of the mundane. When you lose control of your attention, you lose the ability to see the patterns we have discussed. You become a blind actor in a play written by someone else. This chapter is your training in the sovereign command of your focus. It is the realization that what you look at, you become, and what you ignore, you conquer. Look at your life as a series of energetic transactions. Every time you focus on a petty grievance, you are paying for that emotion with the currency of your potential. Every time you allow your mind to wander into the anxieties of a future that hasn't happened, you are bankrupting your ability to influence the present. To see everything, you must become a miser of your mental energy. You must look at the digital landscape and the social noise and see them for what they truly are: sophisticated redirection tactics. They want you to see the outrage of the day so that you do not see the erosion of your own discipline. They want you to see the lifestyle of the elite so that you do not see the work required to build your own foundation. By seeing the trap, you effectively disarm it. You choose to look where the value is, not where the light is brightest. This mastery of attention requires you to understand the psychology of the peripheral. Most people are easily led because their attention is reactive. It jumps to whatever is loudest or most colorful. You must develop a proactive gaze. This means deciding, before you even open your eyes in the morning, what deserves your sight. You look for the signals, not the noise. In a professional setting, while everyone is distracted by a minor setback, you are the one looking at the structural opportunity the setback has revealed. While others are focused on the personality of a leader, you are focused on the quality of their decisions. You see the core of the matter because you refuse to be seduced by the periphery. This selective focus is not ignorance. It is a high-level strategic filter. You are not missing out on the world. You are finally seeing the parts of it that actually matter. Consider the concept of deep observation. Most people look at things for a few seconds before their brain categorizes them and moves on. To see everything, you must learn to hold your gaze. You must look at a problem until it begins to reveal its hidden dimensions. You must look at a person until their social mask begins to slip from the sheer weight of being observed. There is a psychological phenomenon where if you stare at a word long enough, it loses its meaning and becomes a collection of strange shapes. You must do this with your own life. Look at your comforts until they look like cages. Look at your fears until they look like poorly constructed illusions. By holding your focus longer than is comfortable, you pierce the surface layer of reality. You begin to see the textures, the flaws, and the hidden mechanics that the quick glance of the masses will never perceive. To see everything, you must also confront the internal noise. Your mind is often a crowded room of competing voices, the voice of your childhood insecurities, the voice of social expectation, and the voice of your own ego. These voices create a constant flicker in your vision, making it impossible to see the world steadily. You must learn the art of mental stillness. This is not about emptying your mind, but about becoming the silent observer of the noise. When a distracting thought arises, you don't fight it, you simply see it. You note its presence and then return your gaze to the objective reality in front of you. This internal clarity creates an external presence that is undeniable. When you speak, people listen, not because you are loud, but because they can sense that your words are coming from a place of total, undistracted observation. You are all there, and in a world of fractured minds, that is a superpower. Furthermore, you must recognize the value of the mundane. Many people fail to see everything because they are waiting for something big to happen. They are looking for the lightning bolt, the life-changing opportunity, or the catastrophic failure. They ignore the small things, the way they organize their desk, the tone they use with a stranger, the quality of their sleep. But you, with your geometric vision, see that the big things are merely the accumulation of the small things. You see that your character is not forged in the moments of crisis, but in the moments of boredom. By bringing the full weight of your attention to the mundane, you transform it. You see the beauty in the process, the data in the routine, and the opportunity in the average day. You become a person who cannot be tricked by a sudden change in fortune because you have been watching the momentum build all along. This focus also extends to your internal narrative. Every human being is constantly telling themselves a story about who they are and what the world is. To see everything, you must see the story as a story. You must realize that you are the narrator, not the character. When you say, I'm not good at this, or this person is out to get me, you are projecting a film onto the screen of reality. To see the truth, you must look at the projector. You must see the way your beliefs color your perceptions. If you believe the world is a hostile place, you will see hostility in every neutral gesture. If you believe you are a victim, you will see oppressors in every corner. By seeing the narrative, you gain the power to edit it. You stop being the victim of your own storytelling and start being the author of your own facts. The burden of this attention is that it requires constant maintenance. Your focus is like a muscle that atrophies without use. You must daily challenge yourself to see more, to look deeper, and to ignore the seductive pull of the trivial. You must cultivate strategic boredom, the ability to sit with yourself and your observations without the need for external stimulation. It is in these moments of quiet observation that the greatest insights are born. You see the connections that were previously hidden by the noise of entertainment. You see the path forward because you have finally stopped looking at the distractions on the sidelines. You are building a mind that is a fortress of focus, a lens that can concentrate the light of your awareness into a laser of pure intent. As you move forward, practice the 5-minute gaze. Pick one object, one problem, or one person with their permission or from a distance, and commit to observing only that for 5 full minutes. Do not analyze, do not judge, just see. Notice the way the light hits the surface. And notice the micro movements. Notice the feelings that arise in you as you look. You will find that after 2 minutes, your mind screams for a distraction. Ignore the scream. Push into the 3rd and 4th minutes. By the 5th minute, you will begin to see things you never noticed before. This is the threshold of mastery. This is the difference between those who inhabit the world and those who understand it. You are no longer a person who is distracted. You are a person who chooses where to place the light of their soul. You see the value of your attention and you refuse to spend it on anything that does not serve your growth or your clarity. The world is a chaotic storm of information, but you are the eye of the hurricane, still focused and seeing every piece of debris as it flies past. You are ready to see the deeper structures of power and influence because you finally have the focus to look at them without blinking. Chapter 5. The Silent Architecture of Power. You have mastered the currency of your attention and the geometry of cause and effect. Now you must turn your sharpened gaze toward the invisible scaffolding that holds the social world together. Power. To see everything is to recognize that power is not merely a title, a large bank account, or a loud voice. Power is an underlying energy, a silent architecture that dictates who moves, who stays still, and who decides the direction of the collective. Most people are blind to these structures because they look for power in the obvious places, the podium, the corner office, or the flashing lights. But you are learning to see the latent power that exists in the shadows. You are beginning to perceive the subtle hierarchies that govern every room you enter, every contract you sign, and every relationship you maintain. To see power clearly, you must first strip away the emotional weight you attach to it. Most people view power through the lens of resentment or worship, which clouds their vision. They see a boss and feel a reflexive spark of rebellion or a desire to please. You, however, must see the function. Power is a tool used to organize reality according to a specific intent. When you look at an organization, do not look at the flowcharts or the official roles. Look at the flow of permission. Who must give the nod before an idea becomes a reality? Who is the person that everyone looks to when a crisis hits, regardless of their official standing? By seeing the flow of permission, you see the true centers of gravity. You realize that the secretary who controls the calendar often holds more functional power than the executive who owns the desk. You see the gatekeepers, the influencers, and the stabilizers who keep the structure from collapsing. This level of sight requires you to understand the law of social debt. Power is often built on a foundation of unreciprocated value. You will begin to see that the most influential people are those who have made themselves indispensable to the by solving the problems that others are too afraid or too lazy to touch. They have credits in the bank of human obligation. When you see a person who seems to get their way effortlessly, do not assume it is magic or charisma. Look for the history of their utility and see the favors they have done, the secrets they have kept, and the expertise they have cultivated. Power, in its most stable form, is a byproduct of being the most useful person in the environment. To see everything is to see the ledger of these debts. You stop wondering why some people have clout and start seeing the specific investments they made to earn it. Furthermore, you must learn to see the language of dominance and submission that occurs in silence. In every interaction, there is a subverbal negotiation for status. You see it in the way a person occupies physical space, the expansive posture of the person who feels they own the room versus the contracted limbs of the person who feels they are an intruder. You see it in the interruptive rhythm of a conversation. Either person with more perceived power will interrupt more frequently and hold the floor longer, while the person with less will wait for an opening that may never come. By seeing these cues, you can consciously choose your own positioning. You are no longer accidentally signaling weakness or unearned aggression. You move with a neutral authority, observing the power plays of others without being caught in their gravity. You see the game, which means you are the only one not truly playing it. To see everything, you must also recognize the power of information asymmetry. In any system, power gravitates toward those who know something that others do not. This could be technical knowledge, a hidden social connection, or simply an understanding of the real reason a decision was made. But you will see people hoarding information as a defensive wall or leaking it as a tactical weapon. When you look at a conflict, ask yourself, who has the most complete picture and who is operating in the dark? By identifying the gaps in information, you identify the vulnerabilities in the power structure. You see where the blind spots of a leader are, and you see where the false narratives are being fed to the subordinates. This clarity allows you to position yourself as a bridge or a source of truth, gaining influence simply by being the one who sees what others are hiding. You must also turn this gaze toward the power of social proof. You will see how easily the majority is swayed by the appearance of consensus. People look to others to know how to feel, how to act, and what to value. Well, this is the gravity of the crowd. To see everything is to see the moment when an individual abandons their own perception to align with the group. You see the flinch of hesitation before someone agrees with an unpopular opinion. You see the way a trend is manufactured by a few early adopters to create the illusion of inevitability. When you see the strings of social proof, you become immune to them. You are no longer a leaf blown by the wind of public opinion. You are the wind itself. You understand that if you can shape the perception of what is normal, you can control the behavior of the many. However, the most profound power you will see is the power of the frame. In every situation, there is a dominant frame or perspective through which the events are being interpreted. For example, in a negotiation, one person might frame the discussion as a favor, while the other frames it as a transaction. Whoever's frame is accepted by the other holds the power. To see everything is to see the framing battle happening in real time. You notice when someone tries to make you feel guilty to gain an advantage, or when someone uses professional jargon to frame themselves as an expert. By seeing the frame, you gain the ability to step outside of it. You can refuse their definition of the situation and impose your own. You realize that reality is often just the most persuasive story currently being told. You must also observe the power of no. This is the ultimate defensive power. You will see that most people are terrified to say no because they fear social rejection or the loss of an opportunity. Because of this fear, They are easily manipulated and their time is easily stolen. When you see a person who has the calm, unshakable ability to say no without explanation or apology, you are looking at someone with immense internal power. They are the masters of their own boundaries. They see that every yes to someone else's agenda is a no to their own. By seeing the cost of compliance, you begin to value your own no. You see that true power is not the ability to control others, but the absolute refusal to be controlled by them. As you conclude this chapter, reflect on your own power signature. How do you move through the world? Are you a person who is constantly seeking permission, or are you a person who creates the flow of permission for others? Look at the structures you are currently a part of, your family, your job, your social circle. Now, where does the true power lie? Not the power on the letterhead, but the power in the quiet conversations and the decisive actions. When you see the architecture clearly, you stop being a victim of the office politics or the family drama. You see the moves before they are made. You become the quiet observer who understands that the loudest person in the room is often the most vulnerable, and the quietest person is often the one holding the keys to the kingdom. You are now equipped with the vision to see the skeletal structure of human influence. You see the debts, the signals, the frames, and the flows. You are no longer intimidated by the appearance of power because you see the mechanics of how it is built and how it is lost. You are ready to move from being an observer of power to being a person of true, to grounded authority, not because you desire to dominate, but because you refuse to be blind. Chapter 6. The Mechanics of Emotional Alchemy. You have analyzed the structures of power and the geometry of consequence, but now you must look at the fuel that drives the entire human machine, emotion. To see everything, you must stop being a victim of your feelings and start seeing them as data. Most people are lived by their emotions. They are dragged through their days by the whims of their hormonal shifts, social pressures, and unexamined triggers. When they feel bad, they stop. When they feel good, they indulge. But as you sharpen your vision, you will see that an emotion is not a command. It is a signal. It is a piece of information about your internal environment's reaction to an external stimulus. And to see the mechanics of emotional alchemy is to gain the ability to transmute raw, reactive energy into refined, strategic action. Your first step in this observation is to see the gap. Between every stimulus and your reaction, there is a microscopic sliver of time, a space where you have the opportunity to choose your response. Most people's gap is so small it is non-existent. They are purely reactive. To see everything is to expand that gap until it becomes a wide, well-lit hallway. When someone insults you, you see the spark of anger. You don't become the anger, you observe it. You look at it like a scientist observing a chemical reaction in a beaker. You see the heat in your chest, the tightening of your jaw, and the impulse to strike back. By seeing the emotion as an object, you detach your identity from it, and you realize that you are the vessel, not the liquid. This detachment is not coldness, it is the ultimate form of self-possession. It allows you to ask the most important question: is this emotion useful for my objective? If the answer is no, you simply watch the energy dissipate without giving it the oxygen of your attention. To see everything, you must also recognize the primary emotion hidden beneath the secondary one. Human beings often use a louder emotion to mask a truer one. You will see people who project anger when they are actually terrified. You will see people who act with arrogant superiority when they are feeling profoundly inadequate. When you look at your own frustrations, you must look deeper. If you are angry at a partner for a small mistake, are you truly angry about the mistake, Or are you afraid of losing control? If you are jealous of a peer's success, are you seeing their achievement? Or are you seeing your own lack of effort reflected back at you? By seeing the primary emotion, you stop fighting the symptoms and start healing the cause. You become a person who cannot be manipulated by their own ego because you see the ego's clumsy attempts to protect you from the truth. Consider the emotional baseline. Every person you interact with, including yourself, has a default setting, a state they return to when the world is quiet. Some are set to anxious, some to content, others to resentful. To see everything is to identify these baselines in the people around you. When you see a person's baseline, you stop being surprised by their reactions. You realize that the grumpy person isn't reacting to you. They are simply returning to their default frequency. This insight prevents you from taking the world personally. You see that everyone is fighting a battle with their own internal chemistry. This allows you to move through social conflicts with a Teflon spirit. The negativity of others cannot stick to you because you see it as their baseline, not your reality. You remain the master of your own frequency, choosing the emotional state that best serves your current mission. Furthermore, you must learn to see emotional contagion. Emotions are like viruses. They spread through a room via subtle cues in body language, tone, and facial expressions. You have likely experienced entering a room and suddenly feeling heavy without knowing why. To see everything is to see the source of the infection. So you see the one person whose silent resentment is pulling down the collective energy. You see the way a leader's anxiety is rippling through an entire team, causing 1,000 tiny errors in judgment. By seeing the contagion, you can quarantine yourself. You consciously decide not to adopt the emotional state of the crowd. You become a stabilizer. In a room full of panic, your calm becomes a physical force. In a room full of lethargy, your focused intent becomes the spark. You are no longer a mirror reflecting the environment. You are a lamp defining it. To see everything, you must also confront the addiction to suffering. This is a difficult truth to witness, but you must look at it clearly. Many people, perhaps even a past version of yourself, are subconsciously addicted to the chemical rush of drama and victimhood, and they seek out conflict because the surge of cortisol and adrenaline makes them feel alive or important. You will see people who claim they want peace but constantly make choices that invite chaos. You will see people who vent about the same problem for years without ever taking a single step toward a solution. When you see this addiction, you stop trying to save people who don't want to be saved. You realize that they are getting a hidden payoff from their misery. This sight saves you years of wasted emotional labor. You learn to invest your energy only in those who are truly looking for a way out of the labyrinth. You must also apply this to your aspiration. Most people see their goals through a lens of desperate wanting. They focus on the lack, which creates a vibration of scarcity. To see everything is to see the end state as a current reality in the mind. You see the discipline required, the sacrifices needed, and the person you must become to sustain that success. You stop wishing and start becoming. You see that the feeling of success is available to you right now through the mastery of your own focus. By inhabiting the emotional state of your future self today, you create a psychological pull that makes the work feel inevitable rather than forced. You are no longer pushing against the world. You are being drawn toward the vision you have cleared of all doubt. The burden of this alchemy is the loss of the excuse. Once you see that your emotions are variables you can influence, you can no longer blame your behavior on how you felt. You see that feeling tired is just a physical sensation, not a reason to quit. You see that feeling afraid is just a surge of energy, not a reason to hide. You gain a terrifying level of accountability. You realize that your life is the sum total of your responses, and your responses are governed by what you choose to see. You are becoming the alchemist who can take the lead of a difficult situation and turn it into the gold of a strategic victory, simply by refusing to be blinded by the initial emotional reaction. As you conclude this chapter, practice the internal weather report. Every hour, take 10 seconds to check your internal state. Don't try to change it, just label it. High pressure, cloudy, slight anxiety. Clear skies, focused, neutral. By labeling the weather, you realize you are the atmosphere, not the storm. You see that the weather always changes, but the atmosphere remains. This perspective gives you the endurance to outlast any crisis. You know that no matter how dark the clouds are, your ability to see and therefore to act remains your sovereign territory. You are ready to see the world without the distorting fog of unmanaged feeling. Chapter 7. The Mirage of the Social Mirror. You have mastered the internal weather and the silent structures of power. Now you must turn your gaze toward the most sophisticated illusion of all, the social mirror. To see everything is to recognize that most of what you believe about yourself is not a direct observation of your soul, but a reflection of the expectations, criticisms, and praises of others. Since your earliest days, you have been looking into this mirror to see if you are worthy, if you are capable, and if you are correct. But the social mirror is warped. It is a carnival glass that distorts your proportions, magnifying your flaws to keep you compliant and shrinking your strengths to keep you from disrupting the status quo. To see everything is to step away from the glass and look at your own hands, your own heart, and your own results. It is the transition from being a reflection to being a source. Consider the psychology of reputation. Most people live their lives as if they are being watched by a judge who does not exist. They make choices based on how they will be perceived by people who are too busy worrying about their own perceptions to actually notice. This is the spotlight effect, the blind belief that everyone is as focused on your mistakes as you are. To see everything is to realize that you are largely invisible to the world. This sounds like a tragedy to the ego, but to the strategist, it is the ultimate liberation. When you see that most people are trapped in their own internal monologues, you gain the freedom to experiment, to fail, and to reinvent yourself without the weight of an audience. You stop performing for a crowd that isn't watching and start building for a reality that is. Your second task in breaking the mirror is to see the transactional nature of praise. You will notice that when people praise you, they are often not rewarding your excellence, but your compliance with their needs. They cheer when you make their lives easier and fall silent when you pursue a path that makes them uncomfortable. To see everything is to see the strings attached to every compliment. And you begin to value respect over likability. Likability is a cage. It requires you to remain predictable and small. Respect is a recognition of your power and your boundaries. When you see the difference, you stop chasing the dopamine hit of social approval and start seeking the objective feedback of your own results. You ask yourself, did I achieve the goal? Instead of, did they like how I did it? To see everything, you must also confront the ghost of comparison. You live in a digital age where the mirror is global. You are constantly shown the curated highlights of thousands of others, and you reflexively compare your behind-the-scenes footage to their feature film. This creates a permanent flicker in your vision, a sense that you are behind or lacking. To see the truth, you must see the cost of the lifestyle. You look at the successful individual and you don't just see the prize, you see the trade-offs. You see the stress, the lost time, the compromised values, or the singular obsession required to reach that point. By seeing the full ledger, your envy evaporates. You realize that you only want the result if you are willing to pay the specific price. This clarity allows you to define your own standard of success. that is immune to the fluctuations of social trends. Furthermore, you must learn to see the mask of the tribe. Human beings have a deep-seated biological drive to belong, which often manifests as groupthink. You will see how easily individuals abandon their own logic to remain in favor with their social or professional circle. They adopt the same vocabulary, the same enemies, and the same narrow perspectives. To see everything is to remain an outsider on the inside. You participate in the group, but you do not let the group inhabit your mind. You see the moment a conversation shifts from searching for truth to reinforcing the group's ego. You notice the silent excommunication that happens to those who ask the wrong questions. By seeing these tribal mechanics, you protect your intellectual sovereignty. You are the only one in the room who can see the cliff the group is walking toward, because you are the only one not holding on to the person in front of you for dear life. This level of sight requires you to look at the concept of projected identity. Often the people in your life, your parents, your partners, your bosses, do not see you. They see a version of you that fits into their life story. Or they need you to be the reliable one, the rebellious one, or the one who needs help. When you try to change, they react with hostility, not because they hate your growth, but because you are breaking their mirror. To see everything is to see these projections for what they are, their luggage, not yours. You stop trying to convince them of your new identity and simply live it. You realize that you cannot control the image they hold of you, so you stop trying. You become the unknowable element, someone whose internal reality is so solid that external definitions simply slide off like rain. You must also turn this gaze toward the authority figure. You will see that expertise is often a performance designed to discourage questioning. People hide behind titles, uniforms, and complex jargon to create a barrier of unearned certainty. To see everything is to look past the credentials and look at the base logic. Does the person's argument hold up under its own weight? Are their results consistent with their claims? When you see the fallibility of those in power, you lose your intellectual shyness. You realize that the world is run by people no more special than you, only more confident in their filters. This realization levels the playing field. You start walking into high-stakes rooms with the calm of an equal because you have seen the human behind the title. The burden of breaking the social mirror is solitude. As you stop reacting to the reflections of others, you may feel a sense of isolation. You are no longer tethered to the constant feedback loop of the crowd. But this solitude is the forge of character. It is in the absence of the mirror that you finally see your true proportions. You discover what you actually value when no one is looking. You find your natural cadence, the speed at which you work and live when you are not trying to keep up with a phantom pace. This internal stability makes you unshakable. While others are devastated by a criticism or intoxicated by a compliment, you remain neutral. You know who you are because you have seen yourself in the dark. As you conclude this chapter, practice the anonymous act. Do something significant, a great piece of work, a generous gesture, a difficult discipline, and tell absolutely no one. Resist the urge to post it or mention it. Watch the impulse in your mind that screams for validation. By denying that impulse, you starve the social mirror. You prove to yourself that your actions have value even if they are never reflected back to you. You are building an internal reservoir of worth that cannot be drained by the opinions of the world. You are now a person who looks directly at reality, not at the reflection of reality in the eyes of others. You see the social game for what it is, a useful tool for navigation, but a terrible master of your identity. You are ready to see the world with a naked eye, stripped of the distortions of approval and the fog of comparison. You are the source of your own light. Chapter 8: The Anatomy of Crisis and Opportunity. You have dismantled the social mirror and mastered your internal chemistry, but now you must prepare your vision for the moment when the world around you begins to fracture. And to see everything is to recognize that stability is a fragile consensus and that crisis is merely the moment when the underlying reality finally breaks through the surface of a polite illusion. Most people are blinded by panic when things go wrong. They see a disaster and their vision narrows to the point of paralysis. They see the loss, the fear, and the immediate pain. But as you sharpen your sight, you will begin to see the structure of the break. You will see that every crisis is a high-speed education, a moment where the systemic flaws that were previously hidden are laid bare for anyone with the courage to look. To master this level of perception, you must first understand the law of hidden fragility. Most systems, be they financial markets, corporate structures, or personal relationships, appear solid until the very second they are not. People are blinded by linear thinking, the belief that because things were fine yesterday, they will be fine tomorrow. You, however, are learning to see the stress lines. You look at a successful business and you see the burnout in the employee's eyes. You look at a stable relationship and you see the unaddressed resentments piling up like dry tinder. By seeing the fragility before the break, you are never surprised by a crisis. You see it coming from miles away. When the collapse finally occurs, you are the only one standing still, not because you are heartless, but because you have already processed the reality of the situation long before the crowd. This clarity allows you to perceive the opportunity of the vacuum. When a crisis hits, when the existing power structures, social norms, and habitual behaviors are momentarily suspended, there is a period of fluid reality where the rules no longer apply and the map is being redrawn in real time. Most people spend this time trying to glue the broken pieces of the past back together. They want to return to normal. You, seeing everything, realize that normal was the very thing that caused the break. You look for the empty spaces created by the chaos. You see the needs that are suddenly unfulfilled, the leadership roles that have been vacated by the fearful, and the new paths that have been cleared by the destruction of the old ones. You move into the vacuum with a strategic intent. While others are mourning the past, you are colonizing the future. To see everything, you must also recognize the psychology of the herd in panic. In a crisis, the collective intelligence of a group often drops to that of its most terrified member. You will see people making irrational decisions, selling their assets at the bottom of a crash, betraying their values for a moment of perceived safety, or following any strong voice regardless of where it is leading. By seeing the panic as a biological glitch, you remain immune to it. You look at the crowd and you don't see danger, you see data. Their panic tells you exactly where the pressure is greatest. Their flight tells you which areas are being abandoned. This emotional arbitrage allows you to buy when others are selling and to speak when others are screaming. You become the anchor point for those who are lost, gaining immense influence simply by being the only person in the room who can still see the horizon. Consider the concept of creative destruction. To see the world clearly is to realize that nothing can grow without something else making room. You see that your own failures are often the necessary clearing of the land for your next great achievement. When you lose a job or a project fails, most people see a stop sign. You see a pivot sign. You look at the rubble and you ask, what can I build now that I couldn't build when the old structure was in the way? You see the specific skills you gained during the struggle, the useless habits that were burned away by the stress, and the new clarity that only comes from being stripped of your comforts. Did you realize that success is often just the ability to survive the most learning moments without losing your vision? Furthermore, you must learn to see the signal in the noise of disaster. During a crisis, there is a massive influx of information, much of it contradictory and fear-driven. To see everything is to have a filter for the essential. You ignore the sensationalist predictions and the finger-pointing. You look for the physical realities. You ask, where is the energy moving? What resources are actually scarce? What is the one thing that must happen next for the situation to stabilize? By focusing on the first principles of the crisis, you cut through the fog that paralyzes your competitors. You make decisions based on the bone structure of the event, and while they are distracted by the blood on the floor. This intellectual economy makes you fast, precise, and devastatingly effective. You must also turn this gaze toward the internal crisis. There will be moments in your journey where your own identity feels like it is breaking, where your old beliefs no longer fit your new reality. This is cognitive dissonance, the pain of the mind expanding. Most people flee from this feeling by retreating into their old, small certainties. They close their eyes to the new data. To see everything is to welcome the breakdown of the self. You see the discomfort as the growing pains of your consciousness. You look at your crumbling beliefs and you don't try to save them. You watch them fall with a sense of curiosity. But you ask, what version of me is trying to be born right now? By seeing the crisis of identity as a software upgrade, you accelerate your evolution. You become a person who can reinvent themselves in a weekend while others take a decade to change a single habit. The burden of seeing opportunity in crisis is the stigma of the contrarian. When you are calm while others are hysterical, they will often accuse you of being cold, opportunistic, or detached. You will see their attempts to pull you into their emotional drama as a way of validating their own fear. You must see this as a test of sovereignty. You realize that your primary responsibility is not to share the crowd's pain, but to provide the clarity that the crowd lacks. You see that empathy without objectivity is just two people drowning instead of one. But by maintaining your high-altitude vision, you serve the world better than those who are down in the mud with the problems. You are the light bearer because you refused to let the darkness into your own eyes. As you move forward, practice the pre-mortem. Before you begin any major project or enter any new phase of life, sit in silence and imagine it has completely failed. Look at the ruins in your mind, see exactly how it broke. Was it a lack of discipline, a hidden competitor, a structural flaw you ignored? By seeing the crisis of the future today, you gain the power to prevent it. You debug your reality before it even launches. You are no longer hoping for the best, you are engineering the inevitable. You see the holes in the boat while you are still at the dock, and you patch them while the sun is still shining. When you are now a person who does not fear the storm because you have learned to see the wind patterns within it. You see that security is an illusion, but readiness is a fact. You are ready to look at the most chaotic moments of your life and see them as the raw material of your greatness. The world is breaking and rebuilding itself every second. You are the one who is finally watching the process with a steady, unblinking eye. Chapter 9, The Sovereign Gaze and the Ethics of Mastery. You have descended into the mechanics of power, survived the storms of crisis, and shattered the social mirror. Now you must confront the most profound consequence of seeing everything, the isolation of the sovereign mind. To see everything is to move beyond the binary of good and evil that governs the masses and to enter the realm of consequence and utility. Most people operate on a moral autopilot, following rules they did not write and fearing punishments they do not understand. They are good because they are afraid, or obedient because they are blind. But you, with your sharpened vision, have seen the man behind the curtain. You have seen that the rules are often just the preferences of the powerful, and that morality is frequently used as a leash for the unobservant. This chapter is your initiation into the ethics of the wakeful, the realization that with total sight comes total responsibility. Your first task in this new state of being is to see the myth of the victim. In the lower levels of consciousness, people love to point to external forces, the economy, their upbringing, their genetics, as the reasons for their stagnation. To see everything is to see that while you cannot control the cards you are dealt, you are the absolute master of how you play them. You see the secondary gain of victimhood, the way it grants a person a strange kind of social status and excuses them from the rigors of effort. When you look at your own life, you stop looking for someone to blame and start looking for the point of leverage. You realize that even in the most restrictive circumstances, your gaze remains free. You can choose how to interpret the event, how to frame the challenge, and how to prepare your next move. This is the sovereign gaze, the refusal to let any external force define your internal reality. But this level of sight requires you to look at the paradox of influence. As you become more observant, you will find that you can influence people with terrifying ease. You see their insecurities, their buying signals, and the specific words that will trigger their compliance. The temptation to use people as mere tools for your own advancement will be constant. To see everything is to see the long-term decay of manipulation. You see that while you can win a temporary battle through deceit or pressure, you are poisoning the well of your own future reputation. You see that authentic influence, built on a foundation of genuine value and clear observation, is the only power that is truly sustainable. You choose to lead by alignment rather than control. You find the overlap between your goals and theirs, and you navigate toward it. And you realize that a master does not need to trick anyone. They simply make the truth so visible that people choose the right path of their own accord. Furthermore, you must learn to see the shadow of your own ambition. Every great strength carries a corresponding weakness. If you are highly analytical, you may be blind to the emotional nuances of a situation. If you are highly driven, you may be blind to the burnout of those following you. To see everything is to keep a constant eye on your own overshoot. You look for the moments where your pursuit of mastery turns into a pursuit of ego. You see the subtle shift from "I want to achieve this" to "I want to be seen achieving this." By catching these shifts early, you keep your vision clean. You remain a transparent lens for reality rather than a mirror for your own vanity. Aren't you realize that the moment you start believing your own press release, you have become blind again? To see everything, you must also recognize the sanctity of the present moment. Many people who develop high-level strategic vision become trapped in the future. They are always 3 moves ahead, always anticipating the next crisis, and always planning the next conquest. They see the then, but they miss the now. This is a sophisticated form of blindness. To see everything is to be radically present. You see the texture of the air, the physical sensation of your body, and the raw energy of the room you are in. You realize that the future is an abstraction, a mental construct used for navigation, but the now is the only place where action actually occurs. By bringing your full, unblinking attention to the present, and you gain a tactical presence that is hypnotic. You are not waiting for life to happen. You are the one making it happen, one breath at a time. Consider the concept of the burden of choice. Most people find the idea of total freedom terrifying, which is why they seek out leaders, religions, and systems to tell them what to do. They want to be told what is right, so they don't have to feel the weight of a mistake. To see everything is to realize that there is no universal script. There is only the objective reality and the choices you make within it. You are the one who decides what is valuable. You are the one who determines the meaning of your own suffering and your own success. This existential weight can be crushing, or it can be the ultimate source of your strength. You choose the latter. When you see that your life is a work of art that you are carving out of the marble of time, every choice is a stroke of the chisel. You don't ask for permission to create, you simply create. You must also turn this gaze toward the inevitability of the end. To see everything is to look directly at the fact of your own mortality without flinching. Most people live in a state of functional immortality, acting as if they have an infinite amount of time to get started on their dreams or to fix their relationships. They squint at the truth of death. You, however, see the countdown. You see that every hour you spend in distraction is an hour you will never get back. This mortal clarity is the ultimate strategic filter. It strips away the trivial and the petty. When you see the end of the road, you stop arguing about the pebbles in the path. You focus only on the legacy, the impact you leave behind, and the quality of the consciousness you cultivated while you were here. You become urgent but calm, moving with a purposeful speed because you know the clock is ticking, but with a stillness because you know that panic is a waste of precious seconds. The ethics of mastery also require you to see the dignity of the struggle. You will see that you cannot save everyone, and more importantly, that you should not try. Every individual is on their own path of awakening. If you take away someone's struggle, you take away their opportunity to develop their own sight. To see everything is to know when to step back. You provide the tools, you offer the clarity, but you allow the other person to walk the fire. You respect their agency enough to let them fail. This is a higher form of love, a dispassionate compassion that seeks the growth of the individual over their immediate comfort. You see that the hard path is often the only one that leads to the mountain top. As you move toward the conclusion of this journey, practice the daily review of intent. Before you sleep, look back at your day with the eyes of an impartial judge. Where did you blink? Where did you let your ego lead? Where did you choose the comfort of a lie over the sharp edge of the truth? By holding yourself to this standard of total sight, you ensure that your mastery remains grounded in integrity. You are not just becoming powerful, you are becoming worthy of the power you possess. You are building a character that is as transparent and strong as a diamond. And you are no longer a person who is governed by the shoulds and musts of the crowd. You are a sovereign entity who sees the world for what it is and chooses your own path through it. You see the responsibility that comes with your vision, and you accept it with a quiet, steely resolve. You are ready for the final integration, the moment where the observer and the observed become one, and you truly see everything. Chapter 10. The Integrated Sight and the Silent Master. You have reached the final convergence. The journey through the architecture of power, the geometry of cause and effect, and the dismantling of the social mirror has brought you to a singular point of integration. To see everything is no longer an act of effort. It has become your natural state of being. Now, you have moved beyond the looking and into the knowing. But this final chapter is not about learning a new skill, but about the permanent residency in the clarity you have cultivated. It is the realization that the world has not changed, but you have become a different species of observer within it. You are the silent master, the one who moves through the chaos with a terrifyingly calm precision, because you are no longer fighting reality, you are dancing with it. The first mark of this integrated sight is the dissolution of surprise. For the average person, life is a series of shocks and unexpected blows. For you, the word unexpected has lost its meaning. When a market shifts, when a friend departs, or when a body ages, you see it as the unfolding of a flower whose seeds you identified long ago. Or do you see the prehistory of every event? This doesn't mean you are a psychic. It means you are a realist. You have studied the patterns of human nature and physical law so deeply that you can see the trajectory of the storm while the sky is still blue. This lack of surprise gives you a vast emotional reserve. While others are depleted by the constant need to adjust to new information, you are already executing the plan you formulated months ago. You are always playing the end game while everyone else is struggling with the opening move. To see everything is also to see the invisible utility in all things. You no longer categorize events as good or bad. You see them as neutral energy that can be directed. A setback is not a failure, it is a stress test that reveals a weakness you needed to fix. An insult is not a wound. It is a diagnostic tool that tells you exactly where the other person is hurting or afraid. Even your own mistakes are seen as high-value data that you have paid for with your time. By removing the moralistic labels from your experiences, you gain a functional supremacy. You can use everything. You are like a master builder who can construct a palace out of marble or out of mud because you see the structural potential in the material rather than its aesthetic surface. You are never at a loss because you see the potential for leverage in every scrap of reality. Consider the silence of mastery. As your vision reaches its peak, you will find that you speak less. Most human speech is a defensive noise, an attempt to convince others, to hide insecurities, or to fill the void of an unexamined mind. You have no need for these tactics. When you see everything, you realize that the most powerful move is often non-action. You watch the situation develop, waiting for the precise moment when a single word or a tiny adjustment will have the maximum impact. You move with a minimum effective dose. You don't scream to be heard. You speak the truth so clearly that the room falls silent of its own accord. This strategic economy makes you an enigma to the unseeing. They see you doing nothing, yet they see the world shifting around you. They don't see the thousands of hours of observation that allow you to find the keystone of every problem. Furthermore, you must recognize the unity of the micro and the macro. To see everything is to realize that the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. Don't you see the fractal nature of your life? The way you handle a minor disagreement is a perfect map of how you will handle a major crisis. The way you treat your own body is a mirror of how you treat your business or your relationships. By seeing this connection, you stop looking for big fixes and start perfecting the smallest unit. You realize that if you master the current minute, the decade will take care of itself. You bring the full weight of your integrated sight to the simple act of breathing, walking, and deciding. You are no longer waiting for greatness. You are embodying it in the way you pick up a pen or listen to a stranger. This level of perception brings you to the end of judgment. When you truly see the mechanics of why a person is cruel, or why a system is corrupt, or why you have struggled, and the impulse to judge is replaced by the impulse to calculate, you see that people are doing exactly what their history, their biology, and their environment have programmed them to do. This isn't excusing them, it is mapping them. You stop being angry at the scorpion for stinging, you simply stop putting your hand in the jar. This cold compassion allows you to navigate the world without the heavy baggage of resentment. You move through the social landscape like a ghost unseen, untouched, and utterly effective. You are no longer fighting ghosts, you are managing variables. However, the final challenge of the integrated sight is the temptation of nihilism. When you see how the sausage is made, how power is leveraged, how emotions are manipulated, and how fragile human structures are, it is easy to conclude that nothing matters. You must see past this final veil. To see everything is to see that because nothing has inherent meaning, you are the sole architect of meaning. You see the world as a blank canvas of immense proportions. The fact that the rules are made up doesn't make the game worthless. It makes the game yours. You choose to play with a deadly seriousness and a light heart simultaneously. You build, you love, and you strive not because you have to, but because you chose to. This is the ultimate freedom, the ability to see the void and decide to paint a masterpiece across it anyway. As you stand at the peak of this narrative, look back at the person who started this audiobook. And that person was looking for motivation. You have found something much more dangerous and much more powerful: clarity. Motivation is a feeling that comes and goes like the tide. Clarity is a geological fact. You don't need to feel motivated to walk through a door you can see is open. You don't need inspiration to avoid a pit you can see is deep. You simply act because the path is visible. You have traded the high of the motivational speech for the steady glow of the sovereign mind. You are no longer a consumer of ideas, you are a producer of reality. The final integration is the union of the observer and the act. You no longer think, "I am seeing," you simply see. Your actions have become a fluid extension of your vision. When you see a truth, you inhabit it instantly. There is no longer a gap between your realization and your implementation. You have become a high-resolution human being. Every part of you is aligned toward the same objective. This alignment creates a gravity that pulls people and opportunities toward you. You don't have to seek power. Power seeks the person who can see what to do with it. You don't have to seek peace. Peace is the natural result of no longer being in conflict with reality. Your final practice is the perpetual gaze. As you turn off this audio and return to the world of the blind, do not blink. Do not let the noise of the crowd or the seductive pull of the old filters dim your sight. When you feel the fog starting to return, remember the geometry, the power structures, and the internal weather. Remind yourself that you are the witness. Everything you see is a lesson, every person is a mirror, and every moment is an opportunity for mastery. You are the one who stays awake when the world sleeps. You are the one who sees the whole board. You are now the master of your gaze. The veil is gone, the structures are visible, the path is clear. Walk it with the quiet confidence of one who knows exactly where the ground is. You see everything. Now go and build what only you can see.